Hi, guys. Welcome back. Question on your mind, and I don't blame you for the question. Why am I sitting here in a camp chair next to an anvil in a totally different place? Well, welcome to my garage. And honestly, this is the only camera angle I could find that I was willing to film from because the rest of my shop is an absolute disaster. The weather's just turned warm enough where I can get out here and start doing things. And through the off months in the winter, things have been moved around in here to get to stuff, and stuff was put in here just to store it, get it out of the way. So, yeah. On top of that, a lot of the infrastructure out here in the garage existed from the previous owner of this house. So I've put up with it for the last 6 years because, from a DIY standpoint, it wasn't in the way and I found some uses for it. But from a filming and from a storage and organization standpoint, yeah, they're rubbish. So those will be addressed sometime in the future. But for now, we're dealing with what we got. As far as the anvil goes, we're going to do a little blacksmithing today. So we're taking a completely different track than any of my previous videos. I've been working on a project where we set up a coffee station in the house, and my wife wanted some hooks to hang coffee cups from. And I'm very much an amateur blacksmith. I've got some basic tools and a basic propane forge I bought off Amazon. I'll put a link to below because it does work fairly well. But I've got my hammer, some heat resistant gloves I may or may not use, my Hardy, I know I won't be using that today, and my Harbor Freight anvil. Now, a lot of people give this anvil a lot of grief, saying it doesn't have a good ring to it, it's poorly made, whatever. I found the opposite to be true. For the money you spend, and if it's a 69 pound anvil, I believe. I'll have to look that up. I'll put it on the screen. It's cast steel, from what I understand, which is excellent. It um, Mine has excellent ring. You'll notice the chain around it. I had to wrap this trucker's chain around it like 5 or 6 times to tone the ring down enough where I could stand to be near it when I was hammering. And I may put in some B-roll of me taking the chain off and hitting it a few times just so you'll see the difference between with the chain on and with the chain off. But I've had really good luck with it. And for a beginner, for the money, and for the fact that you can run to your local Harbor Freight and pick it up right now, it's without a doubt, I think, the best uh, dollar for bang that a beginner can get for an anvil. And if you're just starting out and you don't know whether you're going to want to stay in it for a long time, yeah, spend the money on this. It's a double horn anvil, meaning it has an angle on this end, letting you get in close to small work. It's got a regular horn on this end. It's got a 3/4 inch hardy hole and a 3/4 inch uh, Pritchell hole, which I think the Pritchell hole actually could be smaller and be better. And my biggest gripe with the hardy hole is that it it goes through to the bottom of the anvil right here, so there's no access to it when you're working if you need to drive a hardy tool out of it if it gets stuck in it. But other than that, it works really good. I've got it on a just a stump I cut. I actually, you can't see the, it's out of frame, you can't see the bottom of it, but I've got this stump propped up because after I cut it, I didn't get it level and I wasn't willing to cut it any shorter because it's at the height I need it. So I just wedged it up on one side and it works fine. I just can't move it around very easily without having to re-wedge it. But we're going to do that. I've got some hooks I've already made that need to be heated and waxed so they won't rust. You'll see some of the rust that has accumulated on them since the last time I worked on it, which was last fall. And this has been a work in progress. Have I mentioned I'm a procrastinator? Yeah, well, just wait, you'll see. Um, so I'm going to make a few more to show the process of how I made them. If I can remember, like I said, it was last fall, and to refresh my memory of how I made them, and to show you how I made them, and then we'll go through with the finishing of getting them heated up and wax coated so that they'll be ready to be used. So, without further ado, let's actually get the forge fired up and get to forging. Shouldn't take long. I will edit out some of these boring parts. But what I'm doing is just taking, get that straightened up a little bit there, and just drawing out that taper a little bit. When you're drawing out, for instance, you notice I'm starting with round stock, and I'm going to wind up with a round piece. But in the drawing out process, and drawing out is where you make the stock longer by squishing it, basically. And in this particular instance, I'm drawing it out into a taper, and it's easier to do that in a square profile. So I only have to turn it 90 degrees to do the drawing out. Hit it once or twice, turn it 90 degrees, hit it twice again, turn it back the other way 90 degrees, hit it again. And by doing that, I can draw it out in a more efficient manner than if I was trying to draw out and keep it round while I was doing it. So you start with square stock or round stock, you make it square, draw it out, and like I said, I'm an amateur at this, so my 90 degrees are not 90 degrees, they're more like 110 and 70, but it still works. It's just not as pretty, especially when you're watching it and I'm trying to show you how to do it. And yes, we have to keep going back to the heat because it loses heat fast. It's a small piece and this anvil is fairly cold. Once you get it tapered out, then you go back to round, and you do that by hitting it on the edges, and you're basically making it an octagonal. You're going from square to octagon. And once you take those corners off, then you take it to round. And it's not going to be perfectly round, but that's the beauty of blacksmithing. There are blacksmiths out there that can take it back to a perfect round. And their skill is absolutely amazing. Mine is nowhere near that. But I like a little character in it. The bumps, it shows it was handmade, not machine made. And while I do like my CNCs, I like my 3D printer, I like my plasma table, and any future CNCs I might wind up with, there's still a place for this. Art is not dead in the world of computers and programs. They can be used to enhance it, but they cannot replace it. Although AI is trying. Don't get me started on the AI. I'm not a big fan of the AI. All right, so I've got my taper. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to roll that over into a scroll. A little round over on the end, like this one. And that's what I'm aiming for. We get it back in the heat. And I want a decent heat on it this time because I am going to be doing quite the bend on it. But it's a small piece, so it doesn't take much. I could probably do it cold. It would just take a lot more work. All right, so now I've got this edge of my anvil right here rounded over. You can see it fairly sharp right there, and it's rounded over here. That's on purpose. So I can take it and beat it around that. Now I've got that started. Take it and beat it back. Yeah, see, I got that a little bit sharper than I wanted, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put it on that edge, beat it down, and get it to coil in a little more like that. A little straightening here, a little straightening there. No two will ever be the same, which is fine. If you get to the point where every one of them looks exactly the same, I think you've overshot. So let's get this back in the heat, and I'm gonna have to get some water. So when I heat this up, I don't want to mess with that right there anymore. So I'm gonna get a little can of water ready, and when I take it out of the heat, I'm gonna quench or cool this end, and then I can roll that over. That's hot stuff. So basically got a hook shape now. Now, the fun part, oh, wait, need to straighten that up. Didn't quite get it lined up with the scroll. Let me heat that back up. Doesn't have to be perfect, but I would like it a little better than that. Nah, I'm gonna leave it. Now I'm gonna heat up this other end, and I'm gonna flare that out and try and do probably gonna do a flat on that one, more rectangular one. Flare that out so I can drill holes in it to mount it on the wall. But I probably should have done that before I did that final hook right there. Like I said, amateur. I'm still trying to figure out how I'm doing all of this stuff. Now the forge I'm using is a 2-burner forge, but I'm only using one of the burners right now. You can cut them off. You can only use one at a time if you want to. For these small pieces, I don't need both burners. Okay, so I want the flare to be on this side, so I want to smoosh this side. So I'm going to hold it up on the anvil And I'm just gonna do, I'm hitting half on the anvil and half off because I want to push the material out. And I'm going to use my cross peen I don't have a good enough hold on this with these tongs. So yeah, this one's going to be a very rough one. The reason I wanted to use the cross peen and did not do it successfully is the cross peen with its profile will tend to push the metal to the sides rather than towards the end. If I use this end of the hammer and hit it like that, it tends to push the metal in all directions, including out that way. I really did not want it lengthening too much. I'd prefer it to widen, and I don't know if you can see, I did get some widening of it, but not quite what I wanted. See if I can soften these corners a little bit. That's probably more rectangular than I wanted. It'll be functional and it'll be rough looking, which, you know, has a little rustic charm to it, I guess, but it's not quite where I wanted it to be. Well, I'm going to call that one done enough for an amateur project. Okay, well, the audio ought to be a little better. I've got the forge cut off. I've got the hooks setting in the forge warming. Might still be too hot. See how hot that is? You don't want these at forging temperature when you're trying to wax them. So this one right here probably needs to cool off a little more. We're going to stick it in here and see what happens. Yeah, see how it smokes? A little too hot. And this is just some Minwax paste wax finishing. Used to be the go-to wax was Johnson's. Everybody, all the blacksmiths, woodworkers used it to coat their tops of their table saws, and Johnson stopped making it. Johnson & Johnson stopped making that paste wax. Minwax is a close second, I think. At least that's what I've heard. So that's what I'm gotten of using, starting to use. Now you can see on this one, I've got a pretty nice little spade on top of that. That's what I was going for before, but apparently I can't remember how I did this. So I'm going to have to go back on YouTube. That's my teacher, by the way, YouTube, and learn how to do that again and get it right. But yeah, that one come out pretty good. I think that's the best spade I've done. Actually, this hook might be the best one that I've done. I don't know, a little spiral right there is not quite as good as that last one I just did. There we go. And we're getting some melting going on in here. Just take a brush, just brush it on. You know, you see it's smoking a little bit. It's really too hot, but it's not so hot that it's burning. And just brush the wax on. We'll set that over there and rinse and repeat until we get them all done. So I won't bore you with all that. We'll come back with the conclusion and I'll show you what they all look like at the end. For you, it'll be just a few seconds. For me, who knows when it'll be. All right, guys, be back in a minute. Well, this is what I wound up with. Am I happy with it? Sure, I like it. Are they perfect? No, they are not. Some of these are misshapen. This one, the spade, is twisted. I don't know if you can see that. It's twisted such a way that when it's up against the wall, the hook's going to be off to one side. I can straighten that, but yeah, it's one of the dangers of if you do this end and then this end, even if you get those two right, when you go to do the bend, they can get off kilted. It's a learning process, and it's fixable. It's metal. It can be reheated and redone. Although I probably won't reheat these because I've already waxed them. But these will go on over our coffee service or coffee setup in the utility room and serve admirably at what we're trying to do. They're not for a paying customer unless I consider my wife a paying customer, which technically I guess she could be. She's the one that asked for these. But yeah, I'm going to call that a win and a project that finally got completed. And you guys got to see what was going on. So win-win all the way around, I think. All right, guys, until next week, we'll see what the old project list brings up. Who knows where we'll be next time. Like and subscribe and come back for more. We're doing all kind of stuff.